Rome, both from air pollution in general, from traffic and different sources, as well as these two case studies of industrial air pollution and the effects on health. So our focus obviously is identifying what the health effects are of these different exposures at a city and population level. Okay, so just to give you some background on environmental epidemiology and what epidemiology is. So we study disease and health conditions that are related to the environment from a population point of view, so from a population perspective. That doesn't mean just the population as a whole, like all the inhabitants of Rome, but also smaller areas and individual characteristics and health conditions that these environmental exposures can bring along. So the factors we study are the chemical factors, the physical environment and the biological aspects. And exposures are involuntary. Obviously, you don't really necessarily want to be exposed to the air pollution when you walk around the city, or the different environmental exposures, or the arsenic in the water, which is a problem. But they happen, they occur, and they do have health effects in one or more ways. The environmental risk factors, as I said, are either of anthropogenic origin, natural origin, or a mixed origin. So they happen, as I said, by natural physical phenomena like heat waves, floodings, storms, forest fires that are naturally produced. Anthropogenic origin, air pollution is a case study, or more severe case study, examples we've had throughout the years, or mixed origin, UV and the effects on melanoma. UV is a natural phenomenon, obviously, for example, because of the ozone hole and other factors, the increase in UV has increased the incidence of melanoma. Out of the recent burden of disease studies that have been carried out worldwide, global studies, but also in Italy by the Istituto di Sanità, out of the 9 environmental conditions and exposures that were considered, you can see PM. So particulate matter, small, takes up 69% of the burden of the effects of this environmental exposure. So air pollution is a big problem. Air pollution isn't only PM, so it's not only particulate matter. There are different sources, which I will go through today. So these are the 2 case studies I thought I would show you from industrial sources. I focus on Rome because obviously we're really here and you probably don't even know that these problems exist when you talk about air pollution and traffic or whatever. But this is one case study which has been in papers and on the news for quite a long time, so from the 90s, well let's say from the end of the 80s, in this small area of Malagrotta to the west of Rome. We have a petrochemical refinery, a solid waste landfill site, and a medical waste incinerator all within 1 kilometre. And as you can see from the map, it's not brilliant, I'm sorry, but there are residential areas and people living right next to these industrial sites, and within a 7-kilometre radius, and it's not that far from Rome city centre itself. And these 3 sites we've had an increase in incidence of cancer and tumours for a whole series of effects, both within the workers of these 3 plants and the residing populations around it. The problem with these studies, though, obviously, is not only identifying who is exposed, and typically what we've done is consider circles or areas or perimeters around looking at the point source of the exposure and looking at what happens around. In recent years, the use of dispersion models, which is a very fancy way of just saying that, okay, we consider the exposure and see where all these pollutants might go. Do they go more to the east, to the south, to the west, considering the climatology, the geography of the area, and different other conditions that might influence or make certain areas more exposed to others instead of just drawing a circle around the main source. And what we found using this other methodology, which has been highly suggested by the EU Environment Agency, the EEA, is that some areas are more at risk than others. And you can see that because there's really point exposures in different conditions as well, some areas are more at risk than others. But you can see that some of the areas closest are actually more at risk for all 3 of these exposures. And what did we find? Well, we found quite a few bad things, to be honest. As you can see, we looked at the 3 exposures from the air pollution from these 3 industrial sites. And what we found was an increase in mortality of bladder and brain cancer among women and disease of the circulatory system within the Lazio site, those exposed to landfill air pollution exposures. From petrochemical refinery, we found an increase in respiratory deaths among men and pancreatic and brain tumours among women. And again, the incinerators results as the landfill, pancreas and brain among women and respiratory disease among men. This is the population exposed, not the workers. Previous studies have been carried out on the workers, and there was a similar trend and higher risks among men also for stomach cancers. So as you see, obviously this area is exposed to quite a serious number of air pollutants, and the effects on health are quite significant. Obviously this is a recent publication that came out in 2015, so it's just been published by one of our researchers, and there are still some limitations because of the data with its population cohort. So the idea is to repeat the cohort among the workers and look at other exposures as well, which is deaths, obviously with the effect on birth outcomes, so that can have an effect. And also looking at the population that has been exposed for a longer set of years. It isn't one of the nicest areas in Rome, obviously it's not in the centre with, with high, it's a relatively poor area, it's probably a lot of England. So we need to also look at the case mix of people. It has been adjusted by socioeconomic factors, but what is really relevant is that it's an area where people don't really live there for many years, so we might lose some of them, we don't know, so the effects might be even higher. So this is a relevant study, and we definitely need to keep looking at and follow up the cohort to see what's happened. The second case study I wanted to quickly go through was a chemical plant in the Epidemiology area. You've probably heard about this, it's been on the news in the last year. But this factory has been there since 1955. Previously it was called Epidemiology, then it became a gas factory. And what they do is they recover precious metal from catalysts to create new catalysts, right? So it's a refinery. And the emissions that come out from these huge chimney stacks are toxic and carcinogenic. There's a whole series of emissions that are really not good for health, and they have been identified by IR and WHO as carcinogenic. So the municipality and local health authorities have classified this plant as an unhealthy industry. There's been different regulations within the regional and the national law to actually close it down. It still hasn't closed down. The population near the plant is about 25,000 residents, and they are potentially all exposed. The main results that we found in this recent last update using the dispersion models again, because again we put all the factors as point source, and we also put around in anybody who was residing within that area was exposed and there was a risk for them. And we looked at the effects on mortality, using dispersion models here again, we looked at the mortality hospital admissions further out, and we found was an excess mortality for different diseases, so lung disease, diabetes and gastric cancer, lung cancer within the area 1 to 2 kilometres from the point source of admission staff, and excess hospitalisation for stomach cancer and non-Hodgkin lymphomas among men. No excess was seen for women, only excess in hospitalizations for digestive disease. Then, as I said, we looked at reproductive outcomes, which has recently been identified as another source to look at when we're considering exposure or short exposure, because obviously within the time of pregnancy and birth, we're not looking at very long effects, or cancers might take a long time to develop, or some chronic conditions. Birth outcome is 9 months, and you can have lower birth or preterm birth or specific congenital non-functions in the children. The exposure has been of the mother in the years before that, so it's a limited time when we look at it to give an idea of how fast some of the health effects can develop within a population exposed to these very toxic and carcinogenic air pollutants. And what we found was an altered sex ratio, which is an indication that something is being developed. So there's a reduction in male births in the area closest to the plant, These results appear to be stronger in recent years, so there's higher evidence in recent years. This is also probably because of the actual coding of certain information we have, the extra information we have on the population, and what the women and the birth conditions. So that suggested increase was also found for risk of congenital malformations, as I told you, among those born in the area of 2 kilometers from the plant. Again, this is the central road, it's not the nicest area, so it's many young families with poor living conditions, living standards. And this brings me to my last topic of the day, which is urban air pollution, which we are all happily exposed to here in Rome. And the sources of air pollution we are exposed to are industrial ones, mainly it's traffic-related air pollution, fossil fuels being burned, and natural gases. As you can see, there's different pollutants. It's carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, particulate matter, both volatile organic components, ozone, and so on. So there's a whole mix of air pollutants. Every one of these has been studied individually or grouped and lumped together in different epidemiological studies. It's really hard to identify which one is dominant compared to others. But the real risk is that they all occur together. So we're exposed to a whole series of things. When we just say we're exposed to air pollution, it's really hard to disentangle the case mix of the effects that we see. Okay, we look at the air quality directives at the EU level and by the WHO, which has actually said, okay, the EU directive says there's 40 micrograms per particulate matter, which is the level of risk. And as you can see from the map, in red are the cities or the areas where we go over the EU limit values on an annual basis regularly. As you can see, Italy is doing really well. And that's for several reasons. Not only because there's big cities and there's pollution, which you can see, let's say, all over Europe. England isn't not polluted. It's just that the weather conditions actually favour the getting rid of the pollution, while in Italy, especially in Ramadan, it's sort of stuck in the middle of mountains and there's no air really washing away all this pollution. It sort of builds up and builds up. That's why it looks so bad. It's not that the other areas don't get rid of pollution. So Italy isn't too big, but the EU standard is 40 micrograms, as I said before, while the WHO actually says, no, hold on a minute, the effects on health are much stronger for lower concentration. So their quality guideline standard is 20 micrograms. So if we consider that, Italy goes over the EU standard 21% of the days in the year. While if we consider the WHO guidelines, we go over that limit, so 20 micrograms, 81% of the days on an annual level. For Italy, not too good for you. And as I said before, this is if we look at the concentrations from year for Italy, the areas most at risk, as you can see, are in Ramadan and the north of Italy, where we have a lot of cities, but it's the geographical conformation and the prevalent, let's say, weather conditions that don't really favour getting rid of all this pollution. They're stuck there in the middle. Large cities like Rome, Naples, Taranto, which you will have heard of in the news as well, as being very big industrial cities, huge risks of air pollution and health effects, with serious reasons. The rest of Italy does quite well. As you can see, there's a geographical distribution which is very even throughout the country. The main health effects about the air pollution, as I said, are quite complex to identify, but have been recognised, are mainly respiratory cardiovascular disease. And in 2013, the WHO agency has actually concluded that air pollution from outdoor sources is cancerogenic to humans, with particulate matter most closely associated with an increase in cancer incidence, especially blood cancer. This has been the first time that it has been recognised as being cancerogenic to humans, considered within the IR classification, which is really important because until then there wasn't really much said, and there are no strong guidelines for it. I think the particular matter guideline only came in within the last 10 years, and there are no indications of the limit, we haven't set a limit for PM2.5, so a very fine matter, but really penetrates loans and have really bad health effects. So if you look at the actual health effects in Italy, a recent study showing that the rough figures are very good, but within the last, so from 2006 to 2010, a study was carried out in more than 20 cities in Italy, and the effect on PM10, NO2, and ozone has been significant in most of the cities going from the north to the south of Italy. As you can see, there is a bit of difference between the cities. Some are smaller, some are bigger, some are more exposed. But it does give you an idea that all the dots that are to the right-hand side of each center line of zero show that there is an effect of air pollutants on mortality, on overall mortality. Obviously, this isn't only for total mortality. You see similar effects when we go look at different causes of death. So if you look at respiratory disease, cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease, this is the estimates for all the cities together, you really do see an effect of all the different pollutants in different ways. This has been also done for very specific causes, and the effects are really strong, not only among the elderly populations, but also among children and young adults living in urban areas. And this is one last thing I wanted to show you, which is a website that we helped construct with Lazio, which is the environmental agency for the Lazio region, where you can go and look up how the air and the air quality is in your city, in Rome. So it gives you an idea of the actual measurements of air quality, the forecast for air quality for the next 3 days. You can look at how Rome did last year compared to other areas in Italy or in Europe, as well as looking at health effects. It's quite an interesting website. For example, this is a dispersion model I was showing you before in much more detail. So we're zooming in, so we see the higher concentration of pollutants in this case with NO2 around the line and the biggest growth in Rome. But it is quite a significant phenomenon. This is just on an annual basis. You can do it for a day, for a month, or however you prefer to do it. It gives you indications of what to do. How can I reduce my carbon? And it just gives very simple indications. Obviously, it's for the population, the general population, and there's more specific indications for people who are more or less. How can I actually reduce my exposures? And if you're interested in any other information on any complications, you can find everything on our website.